What if I told you that one of America's most notorious serial killers was also a charming, charismatic law student? A question that, on the surface, seems as paradoxical as the man it describes, Ted Bundy. A name that sends shivers down the spine of anyone familiar with the dark underbelly of American crime history. Bundy was not your typical villain. He didn't lurk in the shadows, nor did he wear the face of a monster. Instead, he was a handsome, articulate law student who could charm just about anyone. But beneath this captivating exterior lay a ruthless killer. Bundy's paradoxical persona was his greatest weapon, enabling him to lure his victims and evade authorities for years. His story is not one of overnight transformation into a monstrous figure. Instead, it is a chilling tale of how an ordinary man became one of the most feared serial killers in history. The story of Ted Bundy is a chilling tale that begins in the most ordinary of circumstances. Born in 1946, Theodore Robert Bundy had an ordinary upbringing that gave no indication of the dark path he would later tread. In the town of Burlington, Vermont, a seemingly average American child was taking his first steps into the world. Born to a young, unwed mother, Bundy's early life was, by all accounts, unremarkable. His grandparents, who he initially believed to be his parents, raised him with love and discipline. The boy was intelligent, charming, and quickly proved to be a star student at school. As Theodore progressed through his school years, he developed a reputation for being well-behaved and academically gifted. His teachers and peers saw him as a model student, an example to others. He was active in various extracurricular activities, demonstrating leadership skills that were admired by many. There was no sign of the sinister future that awaited him. His family background, while not without its complexities, gave no hint of the monstrous transformation that would occur. Despite the unconventional family structure, Bundy was provided with a stable, caring environment. His family was supportive, encouraging his academic pursuits and fostering a sense of normalcy in his life. However, beneath this facade of normality, a darkness was beginning to take root. A darkness that would ultimately eclipse the promising young man's future, casting a long and terrifying shadow over the lives of many. Unbeknownst to those around him, the seemingly average boy would grow up to become an embodiment of evil. As Bundy transitioned into adulthood, the mask of normalcy began to slip, revealing a horrifying alter ego. Ted Bundy's transformation from a seemingly ordinary young man into a notorious criminal is both chilling and perplexing. This metamorphosis didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual, insidious process that was as stealthy as it was deadly. Bundy's first known victim, a young woman named Joni Lenz, was brutally attacked in her bed in the early hours of January 4th, 1974. But Bundy didn't just attack and leave. No, he lingered, reveled in the aftermath. His modus operandi showcased a disturbing level of sadism that would become a horrific signature in his subsequent crimes. His method was a blend of cunning deceit and brutal force. Bundy often feigned injury or disability to lure unsuspecting victims. Once they were within his grasp, he would overpower them, leading them to an isolated location where he would commit his heinous acts. His crimes were not impulsive. They were calculated, premeditated, each one more violent and disturbing than the last. The escalation of Bundy's crimes is a stark testament to the depth of his depravity. His victims were not mere numbers. They were daughters, sisters, friends, each one a tragic story cut tragically short. Bundy didn't just kill. He terrorized, leaving a trail of sorrow and fear in his wake. Bundy's transformation was complete. The charming, promising young man was gone, replaced by a monster. He had become a master of deceit, able to switch between his charming facade and his murderous alter ego with frightening ease. His escalating violent acts were a shocking contrast to the charming persona he presented to the world. Beneath the surface of the seemingly ordinary man was a darkness that defied comprehension. A darkness that would forever mark Ted Bundy as one of history's most notorious serial killers. In the end, the transformation of Ted Bundy serves as a chilling reminder that evil can hide in plain sight, wearing the mask of normalcy while lurking in the shadows. For over a decade, Bundy's reign of terror spread across multiple states, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. In the early 70s, a dark cloud began to form over the United States. An insidious force was at work, moving stealthily from state to state, leaving behind a chilling path of destruction. This force was Theodore Bundy, a man whose name would soon become synonymous with pure, unadulterated evil. During this period, Bundy's criminal activity reached its terrifying zenith. From Washington to Utah, Colorado to Florida, his malevolent presence was felt, a phantom predator in the night. He was a chameleon, able to blend into the crowd, to charm and disarm with his good looks and charisma, only to strike when least expected. The exact number of Bundy's victims is unknown. Conservative estimates place the number at 30, but the true count may be much higher. Each one was a life cut short, a story left unfinished, a family left to grieve. Each one was a woman, young and vibrant, robbed of her future in the most horrific way imaginable. But it wasn't just the victims and their families who were affected. Bundy's actions sent shockwaves through the communities he targeted. An undercurrent of fear began to permeate everyday life. Women started to second-guess walking alone at night. Parents held their children a little tighter, and an entire nation held its breath, waiting for the nightmare to end. Bundy's reign of terror was not just about the physical violence he perpetrated, it was the psychological torment he inflicted on a grand scale. He wasn't just a murderer, he was a terrorist in the truest sense of the word, inducing a state of fear and panic that gripped the public consciousness. And yet, despite the growing body count and the spreading fear, Bundy remained elusive. He was a specter that law enforcement couldn't seem to grasp, a puzzle they couldn't solve. For years, he managed to stay one step ahead of the authorities, leaving them frustrated and terrified in equal measure. In a chilling testament to his cunning, Bundy managed to evade capture for years, leaving law enforcement perplexed and terrified. His reign of terror would continue, unabated, until fate finally caught up with him. But that's a story for our next scene. But even the most cunning of predators can't evade justice forever. The year was 1978. Ted Bundy's reign of terror had stretched across multiple states, leaving a trail of horror in its wake. But his luck was about to run out. In the quiet town of Pensacola, Florida, an unsuspecting patrol officer pulled over a suspicious vehicle. Little did he know, he had just apprehended one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. The trial that followed was nothing short of sensational. Bundy, ever the showman, opted to represent himself, turning the courtroom into his stage. Yet despite his charisma and legal knowledge, the evidence was insurmountable. The jury deliberated for less than 7 hours before returning a guilty verdict. Bundy was sentenced to death, not once, but 3 times over for his heinous crimes. As news of his sentencing spread, a collective sigh of relief swept across the nation. Families of the victims who had been living in the shadow of Bundy's atrocities finally saw a glimmer of justice. Though nothing could bring back their loved ones, the assurance that Bundy would pay for his crimes brought some measure of closure. While on death row, Bundy began to reveal the true extent of his monstrous actions. The official tally of his victims stood at 30, but Bundy hinted at a number much higher, a grim testament to the depth of his depravity. His confessions, cold and unemotional, sent shivers down the spine of anyone who heard them. Finally, on a cold morning in January 1989, Bundy met his end in the electric chair, a fate many felt was long overdue. As the switch was thrown, the world watched, marking the end of a nightmare that had lasted far too long. Ted Bundy, the charming law student turned ruthless killer, met his end in the electric chair, leaving behind a chilling legacy of terror and death. Ted Bundy's story serves as a chilling reminder that evil can lurk where we least expect it. His crimes, as heinous as they were, have left a deep mark on American society, a ripple effect that has changed our perception of safety, trust, and the people we think we know. Bundy's case has given birth to an era of true crime fascination. His chilling tale of deception and brutality has opened our eyes to the grim reality of what a serial killer can truly be. His gruesome acts, documented and analyzed, have become a cornerstone of the true crime genre, sparking countless books, films, and podcasts. Yet the most haunting legacy Bundy leaves behind is the shattering of the illusion that evil is easily recognized. Bundy's name lives on, not as a charismatic law student, but as a symbol of the chilling capacity for evil that can hide behind the most ordinary of facades.